Thank you. Good morning. My system just cut out by accident because I was in the middle of discussing COVID-19, so it just switched itself off mysteriously. And so now I have to start recording this process again. That is gone. The first video is gone. It's going to appear as a separate video because I'm not yet editing my material. I don't have the means of editing my material. I was actually in the process of explaining that I'm talking about COVID-19. I'm talking about COVID-19 in terms of the cost of living. It's a process I started yesterday, and I was in the middle of explaining the behavior of the system, economic system called capitalism. Uh, the capitalism is designed to shut down the economy, beginning with the public sector, and then the public sector, the private sector will also close down. And then when it closes down, we are going to have an economy. We won't even call it an economy because economy involves trade. You cannot trade if machine is producing goods and services at no cost. That means there will be ownership of wealth without the market system. There will be no selling and buying. In my opinion, because of technology. The reason you sell product because you want to make money, and the only reason you want money is to buy something. And you have to pay for something if it is produced at a cost. But if machine in the future, maybe 50 years, 100 years, 300, 500 years in the future, beginning now, in principle, there should be less and less costs associated with products and goods and services. But for some reason, you find that the cost of goods and services are still high. The cost of food at the moment the government should be able, right now as I speak, to distribute, especially in the developed world, like Britain, America, the United Kingdom. The government now should be able to distribute food freely to people, including energy as well, because of technology. Technology is supposed to drive costs down. But for some reason not really known to me, or maybe if you know anything about that, just leave a comment below. And once again, because this is a new video, it cut accidentally, so I'm now to have to start all over again, introducing again, because I was in the middle of discussing in the other video, and it cut just mysteriously, so I have to start recording again. So I have to kind of like introduce the the topic all over again. Thank you for thank you for supporting this channel, and thank you for subscribing. Subscription is really important, and if you watch this video, please subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe to the channel, it helps the channel to grow, and with the channel growth, it actually it means more people will be drawn into the channel to view it and to benefit from what it is. Also, leave a comment because feedback is very important. And if you enjoy watching the video, or even if you don't really enjoy it, if you happen to watch it, leave a comment below if you have the time. If not, then I will always be happy to meet you whenever I'm recording these videos. And yeah, I will talk about the way the economy behaves. And like I said previously, and I've said, if you want to solve a problem, then you you have to really understand the problem, and that's why I've been making a lot of effort to talk about COVID-19 in terms of the cost of living, and I've also been explaining how things are changing within the government, within society. And I was in the process of reminding every viewer, anybody who is watching this video, to remember that in the past, the government used to be responsible for you. Now you have to take responsibility for yourself. Secondly, we used to rely on welfare, on the welfare state to support people who cannot support themselves. Now that is actually changing for two reasons. The first reason is that um, the government is no longer uh, financing public sector. Therefore, the public sector is closing down. That's why even supporting things like hospitals, employment. I mean, you get a job from even private companies because the government is supporting private companies to create jobs. And if the private sector closes down, the private sector will be unable to create jobs, because the function of the private businesses is not to create jobs. They are there to maximize profit. And efficiency saving means cutting costs. The first thing to cut in a private company is actually labor cost, which means people are going to be laid off. And that's why a lot of people are now losing their jobs. For example, in retail, used to count for, I think, over 50% of employment in the UK, and there's other sectors like hospitality, banking, and things like insurance. All these things, we are the burst of of job creation within things like IT, care sector, and security, and things like that. But these are now being taken over by the machine. The machine is taking over. Computer and robots, in the future, robots and 3D printers, nanotechnology. All these factors are coming together. AI, artificial intelligence. Vehicles are driving themselves. And fuel and energy technology is improving. Electrification of vehicles and automation of vehicles and all the machineries. These are all coming together to start operating society in terms of wealth creation, goods and services. And for that reason, the less and less people are going to be employed. And the primary source of welfare support in the developed world, especially developed world, is employment. Also, self-employment. If you are a small and medium business, you are also reliant on the government to support your business to create jobs as a self-employed. And the third element of support in terms of income is benefit in the developed world. In Africa and other developing countries, the mode of welfare is family and community, and that work differently because Africans produce their own food and energy. They are still getting their thing from nature because most of them own land. They own land through something called customary system. You probably, if you live in a developed world, you probably don't understand that very much. But it means land are still owned by ordinary people. The state is now increasingly taking land away from citizens in Africa. But this is because the British and all the European and the foreign powers who colonized Africa introduced a system of capitalism in Africa. The kind of capitalism which actually take wealth away from the many and give it to the few, which is what happened in Britain, what happened in America, in Europe, in any developed country. The mode of development in building capitalism began by the state taking away land from the people and giving it to the few ruling class, and the rest of the population are kept as slaves. And that's the language of capitalism, whether you like it or not, whether you know it or you don't know it. That is the fact. If you work for a living as an employee or self-employed in the small and medium sectoral um, businesses, you are a slave. Slavery simply means you depend on somebody else for your livelihood. It doesn't mean anything else. If somebody controls your life, you eat food, you access energy because somebody else gives it to you. You have a system of slavery. Even when the government gives you help, that doesn't set you free. It makes you a slave to the state. There's a system. It's not going to go anywhere soon unless we become civil as normal people who live peacefully. Because slavery is a form of violence. Capitalism operated the way it is operating now. It's a form of violence. Every crisis, including the COVID-19, is an incident. It's a coincidence and also incident which actually would be mitigated if the government intervenes in the economy. But every time the government doesn't intervene in a crisis, such as COVID-19, cost of living itself actually is an independent crisis which should be considered by any government to intervene in the economy to help people who are actually dependent either on employers or on the rich or on the government. Government's wealth comes from taxation and borrowing, but also in terms of owning the country, the government in many ways still own the country. Although more and more, the country as we know it, such as Britain or Europe, any of the European countries or America, these countries are now selling the wealth away to the super rich. That means in future, between now and the future, the super rich will be owning the world. It will be their private assets. You walk on a street, you will walk on a road, on a street, or live in a house, or even walk in the park if a private individual allows, because they will be owning it. Now we still enjoy roads. So call it public road, public park. You go to the zoos, we go on holiday, we fly freely, fairly freely, if you have money. But in the future, when private individuals own the world, and there are not going to be many, there are going to be maybe 10 or 5 or 3% of the global population, there will be a coalition of private multimillionaires and multimillionaires owning the world. If they allow you to drink water, you drink it because it's theirs. It's their property. It's their private property. That's what privatization means. That's what capitalism means in practice. That is what is causing the cost of living because of the changes. We are now changing towards achieving full-blown capitalism, where everything is sold off by the government to private individuals who own it privately. They don't give it to anybody. Because you see, it's human nature. If you have something, it's yours. You don't give it to anybody. You have you own the whole Britain. You own the whole of Europe. You own the entire globe. It's your private asset. You decide who lives and who dies. I'm not saying they're going to kill people, but if you don't access the earth, where are you going to go? If you don't have resources even to go to the moon, if you can live in the moon, perhaps somebody is going to go from the earth and buy the moon from I don't know who. Maybe somebody just go and take the moon and say the moon it belongs to him or her. Nobody goes there unless he gives them permission. Nobody lives on earth unless a rich person. There could be only one person owning the entire globe. That is where it is dating. It's not going to stop. What is going to stop capitalism? Nothing. You can only manage capitalism, what goes up will always come down. At some point it will just stop. I don't know when, but everything beginning will always come to an end. if you start something, there is an end to everything. So capitalism will one day end. But I don't know how, I don't know when. For now, what we need to understand what it means to live under a system of capitalism. It means the government selling off. I was talking about David Cameron, former British Prime Minister, when he said, "We are going to give back your country." What he meant was not giving back to any of us. He was talking about the super rich who has money. They have money. The millionaires and multi-billionaires, they have money to buy the house, to buy whatever they like. If you don't have money, you don't buy the country. Even if the government gives it back to you, you will not be able to run it because you don't have money. So this is some of the things I'm trying to talk about. If you understand it, leave a comment below. If you don't understand it, leave a comment below. If you like it, if you don't like it, leave a comment below. Please subscribe. And so far, I'm thankful, so grateful for those who have been supporting me by subscribing and by leaving comments and by working with me on this journey. And like I said, I've been talking about COVID-19 to illustrate the problem of the cost of living, but I've also been explaining the context of the cost of living as a crisis being similar to any of the crises, including COVID-19 as a crisis, including the war in Ukraine as a crisis. So we're talking about COVID-19 create a disease. Disease is when you need medication, you need support, you become sick. And also there are many variants. There's something called SARS. I explained it in the other video, what SARS means, SARS-CoV-2, for example. Because there are several variants which has been named by the World Health Organization and labeled as a variant of concern, VOC, variant of concern, or a variant of interest, VOL. These are some of the languages used when trying to deal with COVID-19. COVID-19 has been quite interesting because COVID-19 has really killed so many people. COVID-19 also disrupted lives. It disrupted livelihood, and so it would be of interest to do, if you have time, learn about it. But the purpose for talking about it to actually set it out as being part of the cause of the cost of living. So many of these variants have shared the infectious D614G. These are some of the information as of May 2023. The World Health Organization had downgraded all the variants of concern to previously circulating, as these were no longer detected in new infections. Sublineages of the Omicron variant B1, BA4 were considered separate VOCs by the World Health Organization until they were downgraded in March 2023 as no longer widely circulating. World Health Organization video which describe how variants proliferate in unvaccinated areas. And there are different areas. We talk about signs and symptoms of COVID-19. And symptoms of COVID-19 are variable, ranging from mild symptoms to severe illnesses. Common symptoms include headaches, loss of smell and taste, nasal congestion and runny nose, cough, muscle pain, sore throat, fever, diarrhea, and breathing difficulties. People with same infection may have different symptoms, and their symptoms may change over time. Three common clusters of symptoms have been identified. One, respiratory symptom cluster with cough, sputum, shortness of breath, and fever, or mucor, mucor, uh, muculoskeletal symptom cluster with muscle and joint pain, headache, and fatigue. A cluster of digestive system symptoms with abdominal pain, vomiting, and diarrhea. In people without prior hair, nose, and throat disorders, loss of taste combined with loss of smell is associated with COVID-19 and is reported as many as 85% of cases. When we talk about transmission, the disease is mainly transmitted via the respiratory route when people inhale droplets and small airborne particles that form an aerosol that infected people exhale as they breathe, talk, and sneeze or sing. Infected people who are likely to transmit COVID-19 when they are physically close to other infected individuals. However, infection can occur over longer distance, particularly indoors. What causes COVID-19? Talk about severe respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, and it's illustrated in what you would call the SARS volume 2 viron. SARS-CoV-2, as they call it, belongs to the broad family of viruses known as coronaviruses. It is a positive sense single stranded RNA plus ssRNA virus with a single linear RNA segment. You talk about genetics involving COVID-19, coronaviruses infect infants, other mammals, including livestock and companion animals and avian species. Human coronaviruses are capable of causing illnesses ranging from the common cold to more severe diseases such as the Middle East respiratory syndrome (MERS). Fatality rate is equal to 34%. SARS-CoV-2 is the seventh known coronavirus to infect people after 229 NL62OC43 HKU1 MERS-CoV and other original SARS-CoV. These are different types of COVID-19, the diagnosis of COVID-19, and talk about a nurse at McMurdo station set up the polymerase chain reaction PCR testing equipment in September 2022. So these are examples of some of the ways of diagnosing COVID-19, the processes, the standard method of testing or presence of SARS. COVID-2 is a nucleic acid test which detects the presence of viral RNA fragments. As these tests detect RNA but not infectious virus, its ability to determine duration of infectivity predictability in infectivity of patients is limited. The test is typically done on respiratory sample obtained by nasopharyngeal swab. Nasopharyngeal swab, however, a nasal swab or sputum sample may also be used. These are some of the techniques used to detect COVID-19. The World Health Organization has published several testing protocols for the disease. How to prevent COVID-19, common measures implemented to prevent the spread of the virus. Further information, COVID-19 and prevention, face mask during the COVID-19 pandemic, and social distancing measures related to COVID-19 pandemic. Preventive measures to reduce the chances of infection include getting vaccinated, staying at home, and spending more time outdoors, avoiding crowded places, keeping distance from others, wearing a mask in public, ventilating indoor spaces, managing potential exposure durations, washing hands with soap and water often and for at least 20 seconds, practicing good respiratory hygiene, and avoiding touching the eye, nose, or mouth with unwashed hands. These are something you are familiar with during the COVID-19 and it still applies to this day. Although, like I said, the primary reason for discussing COVID-19 has to do with the cost of living. But I'm just going through this so that it refreshes your memory to see the kind of stress and the pressure the incident of COVID-19 created is more than financial, more than income, more than poverty. It created a lot of stress, being isolated, created a lot of depression. It created a lot of mental illness, which all builds up to point to the cost of living. Because the cost of living impacts health as well. It impacts food, impacts energy, impacts jobs. A lot of people lost their job because so many companies closed down because of the crisis. Like I said in the other videos, capitalism is susceptible to crisis. That's why every time the government fails to intervene in the economy, the problem just goes out of control, and the government cannot intervene effectively because it has closed down the public sector. The government can only intervene as a public body, and the public body depends on the public economy. Public economy depends on public resources, including spending. And spending has been cut deliberately because the state do no longer want public sector. And for no reason at all. There's no reason why the government is rejecting public sector, because the public sector help poor people. People who are not millionaires, who are not billionaires, are supported by the public sector. So because of the failure of the public sector and the failure of the government, because the government is an organization which is actually public. So when you close down the public sector, you are actually closing down the public aspect of the government. These are sold off to big corporations, something resembling, including something called corporate government within big businesses, and also big corporations within the third sector, the private sector, and like we had seen with the state-based sector. The state-based sector is closing down, which is what we normally refer to as the public sector. It is closing down, and that's why it's the crisis of the cost of living, because the cost of living is affecting poor people, people who have to work for a living, and people who depend on the government to provide employment, access to health care, to public transport, and to actually keep costs to a minimum to support people with low income. Rich people who are millionaires and multimillionaires do not need the public sector. They are the few and not the many. About 10 or 15% of the population are actually super rich who do not need public sector. So the logic of closing down the public sector does not arise. It's illogical. Is actually a form of insanity on the part of any government practicing privatization, which is blind to the requirement of the public sector. So, going back to this material, those diagnosed with COVID-19 or who believe they may be infected are advised by the healthcare authorities to stay home, expect to get medical care call ahead before visiting a healthcare provider, wear a facial mask before entering the healthcare provider's office, and when in any room or vehicle with other person, cover coughs and sneezes with tissue, regularly wash hands with soap and water, and avoid sharing personal household items. So some of the information are linked to the COVID-19. COVID-19, like I said, being responsible significantly to create the cost of living. We talk about vaccine of COVID-19. Most of you would be aware of what vaccination means and what it did to you or to your family or to individuals, whether you think it is good, whether you think vaccination was to be trusted or not. These were some of the issues associated with COVID-19. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think about the COVID-19 vaccine and how it affected your health. Some people fell sick more, even sicker, with deployment of COVID-19 into the community in which they were also involved in the vaccination. It actually, some people claiming that some people died because of vaccine. Leave a comment below if you think COVID-19 vaccine is a problem. If you trust the government, if you trust the authorities, leave a comment below if you don't trust them. And all these, because people getting sick and sicker, not being able to work, not being able to do business, people became poorer. Therefore, this is how COVID-19, including even the vaccine, which actually created made some people even sick, causing death even allegedly, or in fact, also killing some people. All this actually come together to create the cost of living as we know it, as we are discussing. COVID-19, a COVID-19 vaccine is intended to provide acquired immunity against severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2, SARS, SARS, the virus that causes coronavirus diseases 2019, COVID-19. So these are actually acquired immunity, which is actually what you get. Acquisition mean you get something given to you. It's not, you don't own it naturally, so it's something you get. So prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, an established body of knowledge existed about the structure and function of coronavirus causing diseases like severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, and Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS. This knowledge accelerated the development of various vaccine platforms during early 2020. The initial focus of SARS-CoV-2 vaccines was on preventing symptoms and severe illness. The COVID-19 vaccine are widely credited for their role in reducing the severity and death caused by COVID-19. As of March 2023, more than 5.5 billion people have received one or more doses, 11.8 billion in total in over 197 countries. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was the most widely used, according to a June 2022 study. COVID-19 vaccine prevented an additional 14.4 million to 19.8 million deaths in 185 countries and territories from 8 December 2020 to 8 December 2021. On the 8th of November 2022, the first recombinant protein-based COVID-19 vaccine, Novavax booster, uh, uh, Nuva, Nuvasovid, was authorized for these in adults in the United Kingdom. It has subsequently received endorsement authorization from the World Health Organization, the US, European Union, and in Australia. On the 2nd November 2022, the World Health Organization released its Global Vaccine Market Report. The report indicated that inequality in equitable distribution is not unique to COVID-19 viruses. Countries that are not economically strong struggle to obtain the vaccine. On 4th of October 2022, the first inhalable vaccine was introduced, developed by Chinese biopharmaceutical company CanSino Biologics in the city of Shanghai, China. How COVID-19 was treated and its management. A critically ill patient, for example, was shown receiving invasive ventilation in the intensive care unit of the Art Institute, University of Sao Paulo in July 2020. These are some of the techniques used to try and treat COVID-19, and due to shortage of mechanical ventilators, a bridge ventilator is being used to automatically actuate a bag valve mask. For the first 2 years of the pandemic, no specific effective treatment or cure was available. In 2021, the European Medicines Agency, EMA, committed to medical products, a human use CHMP, approved the oral antiviral protease inhibitor Paxlovid, namatriptyline plus AIDS drug ritonavir to treat adult patients. The FDA later gave it an EUA. Most cases of COVID-19 most cases of COVID-19 are mild. In case supportive care includes supportive care include medications such as paracetamol or NSAIDs to relieve symptoms, fever, body aches, cough, adequate intake of oral fluids, and rest. So, yeah, COVID-19 came in all shapes and sizes because, and different people also experience it differently. And a lot of people I know, family, friends, who caught COVID-19 even more than once, and on both occasions or more, didn't go to the hospital. They just took remedies, medication from home, ordinary medication. It was like an ordinary disease, but the world is a complex place to be. Supportive care in severe cases includes treatment to relieve symptoms, fluid therapy, oxygen support, and prone positioning, and medication or devices to support other affected vital organs. More severe cases may need treatment in the hospital. In those with low oxygen levels, use of the uh, glycocorticoid, corticoid, the the zami, the zamethasone is recommended to reduce mortality. That's why our pro will never be a medical doctor, because I will have to learn to pronounce all these medical things. Uh, Non-invasive ventilation and ultimately admission to an intensive care unit for mechanical ventilation may be required to support breathing. And if you speak to people who went to the hospital with their conditions, who went through the process of ventilation, a lot of people actually, in terms of body function, in terms of being, their health deteriorated. Some people even died. And it's not clear from the ordinary people whether the approach to use respiratory ventilation method to support breathing was actually a good approach. I think some people thought it probably created death in certain patients. So, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation (ECMO) has been used to address the issue of respiratory failure. Existing drugs such as hydrochloroquine, hydroxychloroquine, uh, lopina, lopinavir, and ret, ret, ritonavir, and ivermectin are recommended by US and European health authorities, as there is no good evidence they have any useful effect. The antiviral rem, rem, remdesivir is available in the US, Canada, Australia, and several other countries with varying restrictions. However, it is not recommended for use with mechanical ventilation, and is discouraged altogether by the World Health Organization due to limited evidence of its efficacy. Prognosis of COVID-19, long COVID, and all the other types of COVIDs. The severity of COVID-19 virus, it may take a mild course with a few or no symptoms, resembling other common upper respiratory diseases such as the common cold. So you fall sick, you feel sick in a normal way. In 3 to 4% of cases, 7.4% of those over 65 symptoms are severe enough to cause hospitalization. Mild cases typically recover within 2 weeks, while those with severe or critical diseases may take 3 to 6 weeks to recover. These are some interesting information about COVID-19. COVID-19 is still there anyway, but the reason I'm actually talking about it, if you have watched this far, talk about COVID-19 because of the cost of living, and also using it to explain the economic impact on healthcare, and also the public component of the economy to support healthcare and related aspects, which actually directly or indirectly impact on the cost of living, or the standard of living, with features as the cost of living. A prolonged prothrombin time and elevated C reactive protein levels on admission to the hospital are associated with severe course of COVID-19, and with a transfer to intensive care units (ICU). Between 5% and 50% of COVID-19 patients experiencing long COVID a condition characterized by long-term consequences persisting after the typical convalescence period of the disease. The most commonly reported clinical presentation are fatigue and memory problems, as well as malaise, headaches, shortness of breath, loss of smell, muscle weaknesses, low fever, and cognitive dysfunction. There are several strategies actually implemented by the health sector to mitigate COVID-19. Goals of mitigation include delaying and reducing peak burden on healthcare, flattening the curve, and lessening overall core cases or and health impact. These are actually administrative in terms of healthcare procedures, infrastructure. However, progressively greater increases in healthcare capacity raising the line, such as by increasing bed count rather, personnel and equipment help to meet increased demand. Many countries attempted to slow or stop the spread of COVID-19 by recommending, mandating, and prohibiting behavioral changes, while others relied primarily on providing information. Measures range from public advisories to stringent lockdowns. Yeah, lockdowns is really very memorable. Uh, Outbreak control strategies are divided into elimination and mitigation. Experts differentiate between elimination strategies known as zero COVID that aim to completely stop the spread of the virus within the community, and mitigation strategy commonly known as flattening the virus that attempt to lessen the effects of the virus on society, but which still tolerate some level of transmission within the community. These initial strategies can be pursued subsequently and simultaneously during the acquired immunity phase through natural and vaccine-induced immunity. Nature reported that, in 2021 that 90% of researchers who responded to such a survey think that the coronavirus will become endemic. How the disease COVID-19 was contained. The strategy to contain COVID-19 containment is undertaken to stop an outbreak from spreading into the general population. Infected individuals are isolated while they are infectious. The people they are interacted with are contacted and isolated for long enough to ensure that they are either not infected or no longer contagious. Screening is a starting point for containment. Screening is done by checking for symptoms to identifying infected individuals can then be isolated or offer treatment. The zero COVID strategy involves using health measures such as contact tracing, mass testing, border quarantine, lockdowns, and mitigation software to stop community transmission of COVID-19 as soon as it is detected, with the goal of getting the area back to zero detected infection and resuming normal economic and social activity. Successful containment or suppression reduces RT to less than one. Talk about mitigation to look at flattering the curve. Should the containment fail, efforts focus on mitigation measures taken to slow the spread and limit its effect on the healthcare system and society. Successful mitigation delays and decreases the epidemic peak, known as flattening the epidemic curve. This decreases the risk of overwhelming health services and provide more time for developing vaccine and treatments. Individual behavior change in many behavior changed in many jurisdictions. Many people work from home instead of at their traditional workplace. Thank you for watching this video. I'm going to stop here. I'll continue in the next video looking at COVID-19, but my primary aim is to link COVID-19 to the cost of living, while also explaining to justify my proposition that the government is responsible for the cost of living by failing to intervene in the economy, and the government failing because of the incapacitated status of the public sector. This has occurred because the government has also shut down almost all of the public sector in the UK and across the globe. Every government is doing the same or similar thing. It's called capitalism, it's called marketization, where businesses are seen as best to operate economies globally, and globalization being the expanding of capitalism. And also, these also are features representative in all sorts of activities occurring in societies, including the cost of living being local, national, and global. And see you in the next video. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed before, and if you care to comment, feel free to make a comment. And see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.